You don't need 12 inches to get the job done anymore. Something like this here can just light up her day. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Tactical Leprechaun EDC. I'm your host, the Tactical Leprechaun, and today we're going to talk about flashlights. So the first thing we're going to talk about is numbers. Now, if you've ever looked into flashlights at all, I'm sure you've seen lumens. A 500 lumen light, 1,000 lumen light, 1,500 lumens. What's this number mean? Lumens is largely used in marketing, and really it's just the measurement of the total light output of any given flashlight. While total light output is important, it's not the only factor of what a light is and what it can do for you. So something you're gonna see, and this is across all brands, a lot of what determines how bright a light is, or the lumens, is going to be determined from the power source. For instance, something that runs like this Streamlight off of AAAs or something like this ThruNite off of AAs are not going to be able to put out quite as much light as something that runs off, say, an 18650 or I believe this runs off of a 21700. Your bigger batteries are going to lead to more light output, but they're also going to obviously make the light bigger and heavier. If you're looking for a flashlight on the internet, the biggest number you're going to see is lumens, and that's what most of the companies want to advertise. But a number that can be more important, depending on what you're doing with the light, is candela. What is candela? Simply speaking, it's intensity at a point, meaning the center hot spot of a flashlight. If you've ever shined a flashlight at a wall, it's usually brighter in the middle. The higher the candela, the more intense it is right in the middle of that beam. Which is better? Higher lumens, lower lumens, higher candela, lower candela. Generally speaking, most lights are going to have multiple settings to where you can adjust the amount of total light output. Typically high, medium, and low. Some lights have more than that. Some lights have just high and low. But as far as total light output, that's generally going to be adjustable on most modern flashlights. Now, with candela, while yes, you are going to change the peak intensity of the light when you change the brightness setting from high to low, what you're not actually going to change is your beam pattern. So a light that's rated for really high candela is going to have a really tight beam pattern. And whether you're on high or low with your flashlight, it's still going to be a really tight beam pattern. All that's going to change is the actual brightness of that beam. While it is true that with most lights, you cannot change the beam pattern, there are a very few exceptions to that rule. Typically, you're going to find these as cheap lights at gas stations, but there is at least one company that I know of that actually makes a quality version of this light, and that is Coast. These lights actually have a slidable light head that can change the beam pattern. And we're going to put some shots of that on screen here. The particular one that I have is the Coast TP9R. And this is a 1,000 lumen light that has a very wide beam pattern unless you pull the head out. That's what she said. In which case, it gives you a tighter, more condensed, higher candela beam pattern. As you're about to see on screen, a comparison between a lower candela and a higher candela light, this Olight and this Nitecore are very similar in total light output, or lumens, but very, very different in their candela, or peak intensity. The Olight, as you can see, has a much wider, more spread out beam, which can be helpful, especially at closer distances when you're trying to scan an entire area and light the whole area up. Whereas if you're trying to look a little bit further away, you might need more intensity to cut through to reach further out. Which is going to be better? Something with higher candela or something with lower candela? Generally speaking, that's pretty well going to be personal preference. Some things you need to remember, though, are while you can diffuse a high candela light by, say, shining it at the ceiling, you cannot take a low candela light and turn it into a high candela light. So if you need to cut through the darkness and see something further away, a higher candela light might be what you need. Personally, I prefer higher candela lights. For what I mostly use a light for, they typically work better for me. Now, the number that's going to be probably the most important to a lot of people is, well, US dollars. How much do these lights cost? Honestly, there's a wide variety of lights out there, and you can spend a pretty small amount of money up to quite a bit of money on a single flashlight. For instance, both of these lights cost around $20. This is a Streamlight Stylus. It runs on 2 AAA batteries. Again, costs about 20 bucks. And this is a ThruNite T10-2, runs on a single AA battery. Both of these lights put out somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 to 300 lumens. They don't have a real bright hotspot, but for most of what you're going to be using a flashlight for, looking for your keys, the power went out, you need to find the breaker box, these are going to get the job done. The rest of the lights here range anywhere from about $40 all the way up to about a little over $200. The question is, what are you getting for what you're paying? Well, honestly, you can get really bright lights with really intense hotspots for not all that much money. For instance, this light, it's 1,000 lumens, very bright hotspot. I think this light only cost me about $40. I'll have links to all of these in the description. Full disclosure, I bought all of these lights except for this one, and this is just a friend's that I'm borrowing. Nobody sent me any of these. So the most extreme example I have on the table of a drastic price difference at a similar performance point are these two lights. This is a Nitecore MT2C Pro, and this is the Cloud Defensive MCH Duty. The Nitecore will run you about 60 bucks on their website, and the Cloud Defensive I bought off of Amazon for about 210 bucks. Both of these lights run off of an 18650. They both do about 1800 lumens of total output. The Nitecore is a little bit higher in the peak intensity at around 67,000-ish candela. I'll put that on the screen, the exact number. And the Cloud Defensive runs right around 50,000 candela. So what's the main difference between these two lights? Well, first of all, where they're made. The Nitecore light is made overseas, whereas the Cloud Defensive is made here in the States. The biggest thing is going to be the materials they're made out of and how durable they are. If you're interested in seeing torture tests of these lights, you're going to have to look those videos up because, again, I spent my own money on these lights, except for this one that isn't actually mine, and I will not be destroying them for the video. In terms of durability, I'm going to be honest with you. I've carried all of these lights, except for this particular Nitecore. I've carried all of these lights on the table. All of them have survived me. You can see some pretty serious wear on some of these versus this one is fairly new. But all of them have been, you know, in my pocket. They've been dropped. They've been tossed around. They've been used extensively. And frankly, I think for the average person, as far as durability goes, most modern flashlights are going to stand up to what you're going to use them for. In terms of dropping them or beating them up, I will say I've watched videos of people driving in nails with this light. The head of this light is made out of a hardened tool steel, and I've watched somebody take it and hammer a nail into a 2x4 with it. Frankly, I thought that was pretty impressive, although, if we're being honest, how many people are doing that with their flashlight? I know I've never needed to do that. Another consideration you may have is what fuels your flashlight. Again, these two lights, this one runs off of 2 AAA batteries, this runs off of a single AA batteries. Common batteries you can find anywhere. You can buy these at a gas station. The rest of the lights on this table run off of rechargeable batteries, anything from an 18350 all the way up to a 21700. If you don't know what those numbers mean, frankly, it doesn't really matter. Just know that they're rechargeable batteries. All of these lights have different ways of charging. This one has a charger that snaps onto the tail cap to charge the light up. Both of these have batteries that come out, and the batteries themselves have a physical USB-C port built into the battery. This one you have to put in a specialized battery charger that these lights come with. So any of these lights that take rechargeable batteries on the table, you can charge them with what they come with. Personally, my preference is dual fuel lights. What does that mean? Well, these two and this one, while all three of these lights do come with their batteries and a way to charge them, all three of them can take a common battery that you can buy at most big box stores and even a lot of gas stations. If you've ever seen the CR123s, these are, like me, a shorter, fatter AA battery almost. They're a 3-volt battery. This one can run off a single one of them, and both of these can run off of 2 of those. While the CR123s are a common battery that you can buy at most stores, the one caveat to that is that none of these lights will run at their full brightness if you're using CR123s. And that is generally going to be true of all dual fuel flashlights. Most of the flashlights that can take an 18350 or an 18650, if you put CR123s in them, if they have the ability to take those, are going to be less bright with the CR123s. What light should you buy? Well, honestly, a lot of it is going to come down to personal preference. What kind of fuel source do you want your light to run on? Are you looking for American made? Does that matter to you? How durable do you need your light to be? Do you want a more spotty light or something with a little bit more spread to the beam? Honestly, it's going to be totally up to you, but I do have some recommendations. My first recommendation is to do your own research. Don't just take what I say in this video. There are tons and tons of resources out there on the internet, and there's plenty of videos on YouTube. Torture tests, beam comparisons, etc. Second piece of advice I have, be careful where you buy flashlights. Typically, I would recommend buying from the manufacturer themselves or a reputable dealer such as Optics Planet or Euro Optics. These are both good places to buy flashlights. As far as actually recommending a specific light, if I'm being completely honest, this is my current favorite. It's the most recent one I bought. It's wildly durable. It can take a lot of abuse. Very bright, very useful light. However, for most people, $200 plus might be a little much to spend on a light. So, in terms of my actual recommendation for most people, it's going to be one of these two Nitecore lights. Honestly, they both have a high and low setting, they come with a rechargeable battery, and they're both very affordable. I believe this one comes in right around $40, and this one comes in right around $60. This one takes an 18350 and can run off of a single CR123. This takes an 18650 and can run off of 2 CR123s. Both of them come with a rechargeable battery, and they come with a cable to charge the battery, though most of us have a USB-C cable laying around the house somewhere. So again, the larger light, the MT2C Pro, does belong to a buddy of mine, and he just recently picked this up. Being said, the MT1C Pro, the smaller one, is my personal light that I've carried for probably 6 to 8 months. I don't remember exactly when I bought this. Every day, I use my lights every day at work, and this thing is just held up. They're great lights, they're relatively inexpensive, and frankly, I think for the average person, it's going to be really hard to go wrong with one of these. Being said, again, there's a ton of lights out there. Do your own research, figure out what's going to work for you.